So much drama. Babies bring out the worst in in-laws. Some backstory before I share the text messages that really make this great. PSA. This story is long because it contains messages, but the drama is worth it. This officially started because my grandmother-in-law really wanted to see my newborn son. My grandmother-in-law over the years has started to show signs of what I believe is dementia and doesn't make the best judgments. I've also realized she can be emotionally manipulative, and has been way before she started to show signs of not completely being there. I won't go in too much detail about this, just trust me when I say she's overall not a great person, but still she's my husband's grandmother and I would have never done anything to upset her. Now, after about 2 months, my grandmother-in-law has really been pushing to see my son. Both me and my husband were hesitant about this because she has been very sick recently. On top of that, she has a history of being sick but not telling anyone that she is until after the fact.
A family gathering.
When I was hella pregnant, we were invited to Thanksgiving at their house, and I declined to go because I was getting induced the next week, and if I got sick, they would have pushed it back further. My grandmother-in-law promised she was fine, but I didn't feel comfortable with it and stayed home. Not even 2 days later, she told mother-in-law she was very sick and wasn't feeling great even at Thanksgiving. All relevant to why I didn't want her to see my son yet, as we are still deep in RSV season, and he had just gotten his first round of vaccines. However, much pushing, and guilt-tripping, from both her, mother-in-law and sister-in-law, we decided she could meet our son at our house. Just a little detail, we live with my grandmother and she helps me so much with my son, honestly the most amazing woman ever. We decided if grandmother-in-law was going to come over, we were going to set boundaries to make sure our son was safe and have our own peace of mind. The boundaries were that we weren't comfortable with grandmother-in-law holding son but would love for her to finally be able to see him. I specify this because some people see it was wrong that we would exclude her from holding son, but we specified this to everyone before she came over and grandmother-in-law agreed with it. Remember, she has continuously been sick and won't tell anyone she is, and when it comes time to see son, no way in hell was she going to cancel if she felt ill. On top of this, we said she needed to wear a mask and take a COVID test beforehand. The day that she came over, we received a text from mother-in-law that she also was coming with my grandmother-in-law and asked what time they should arrive. Mother-in-law has been to our house a few times, so it wasn't a huge deal, but I realized now it wasn't the best idea. They walk in and grandmother-in-law shows my grandmother the COVID test, not us but whatever, and proceeds to stuff the mask she was holding back into her purse. At this point I'm kind of over it, but I just smile and talk to her for a little bit before going back to the kitchen while my husband took the dog outside to use the bathroom. When I was out of hearing range, or so she thought, she asked my grandmother to hold son. My grandmother turned to me in the kitchen and repeated the question, and I simply stated, "Would you mind asking husband when he gets back?" I figured since it's husband's grandmother-in-law it would be a lot gentler if he let her down. Instead, grandmother-in-law started crying, no actual tears, and exclaimed, "Why does no one like me?" Remember what I said about emotionally manipulative? Yeah. I was uncomfortable. My grandmother was uncomfortable. Our poor other dog in the kitchen with me was uncomfortable. I excused myself to go start laundry. After checking with my grandmother, she was okay holding son for another minute before my husband came back in. Immediately when I left the room, again my mistake, my mother-in-law walks over, takes son from my grandmother and puts him on my grandmother-in-law's lap. Before this, son was smiling and laughing while my grandmother held him, faced him toward grandmother-in-law. My son lost it and started screaming. My husband walks in at this point, sees son on grandmother-in-law lap, and immediately grabbed him from grandmother-in-law and went into the kitchen. My mother-in-law was shocked and made a snide comment of, "Oh, so no one gets to him son today." Then they both left soon after, and my grandmother apologized profusely for the situation when I found out. It definitely wasn't her fault at all. Now comes the real dramatic part. 3 weeks after what I will now call the incident, my mother-in-law has been calling husband, and we explained to her that we were upset with that happened. She didn't grasp what she did wrong, and the conversation ultimately went nowhere. Another week and more calls. Here's where the text messages come into the story. Husband to mother-in-law. "Hey, I want you to know I'm not ignoring you, but I'm still not over what happened. We want you to be a part of ours and son's life, but because of the boundaries you broke, we don't feel comfortable having you over for a while. Next week." Sister-in-law to husband. "Want to do dinner at mom's on Saturday if y'all aren't busy? I want to see son." Husband. "No. Mom still hasn't even tried to talk to us after her and Nana came here." Next day. Sister-in-law to husband. "Hey, what's the deal with mom and Nana? Something's been off since that day they came over there. Y'all have been distant. I just want to know what's going on." Husband. I already talked to mom, but me and Op decided that we aren't comfortable with mom coming over for a while because she broke boundaries. It's important to us because we did discuss beforehand what we expected, and son health is more important than anything. Sister-in-law. Oh okay, but what boundaries were broken? I'm confused. She wasn't sick or anything? She had been around son before the day they went over there. What happened specifically the day that made y'all feel uncomfortable? Other than Nana not wearing a mask. Husband. We already told mom about it, don't worry. Next day. Side note, my postpartum depression has gotten extremely bad and in-laws were starting to be a little much on Facebook, so I took them off. Sister-in-law to husband. Why did Op unfriend me and mom on Facebook? Stepdad just called and said mom is bawling her eyes out over this whole situation. I don't know what the deal is, but I hope you realize what y'all are doing to the family. I'm not trying to be in the middle of anything, but mom and Nana feel like they can't talk to you or Op. What's the deal? This shit can't go on forever, y'all need to work it out. Husband. Like I said before, we already talked to mom about it. You said you weren't going to choose sides and it seems you already have. Please stay out of it. Op unedited everyone because she has way too much going on and doesn't want to be in the drama. We never said mom wouldn't see son again, but we still need time. Son is our son, and mom and Nana broke a boundary that we set even before son was born. Even if someone in Op's family did the same thing, it would be the same outcome. We were hesitant about Nana coming over at all because of exactly what just happened. Next day, and after phone call with sister-in-law where sister-in-law said Op was causing all the drama. Husband to sister-in-law. After that conversation, me and Op have talked and decided we feel you need to completely stay out of everything going on. We understand you're trying to defend mom and be a messenger, but you have more than likely have unknowingly taken her side in this when there is no side. We are son's parents, and we get to decide who does and doesn't see him. We aren't going to keep going in circles on what boundaries are because we have already stated multiple times what they were. What matters now is that mom and now you can't respect that we need time to just move on from the situation. No one is trying to start drama, but by dragging more people into this, like dad, you are in fact causing drama and we don't appreciate it. In case you forgot, we were very hesitant on Nana seeing son for the very reasons that happened. Not only did Nana ask to hold son when both Op and I left the room, but mom then took it in her own hands to hand son to Nana. We already stated we were concerned for son getting sick and weren't comfortable with her holding him, but that wasn't good enough for them. Son is not a toy. We aren't mad at them but the situation, but you have nothing to do with it. It doesn't matter, you're the messenger, you can still come see son whenever you want, but we need time away from mom and to process the situation. Sister-in-law. Lol, okay. In case you're wondering, yes, sister-in-law did kind of come out left field. I received comments that we shouldn't have just let us continued and just ignored sister-in-law, but we genuinely wanted her to just understand why we were upset and we would really like her to not get involved. I was starting to feel like maybe I was just a bitch and posted the text messages, names hidden of course, to a Facebook group called Monster-in-Laws. Not even a few hours later and I received a text from sister-in-law with screenshots of the post and question marks. I have no fucking clue how she found the post as she is blocked on my Facebook, but she did. I felt very uncomfortable with her just happening upon on my post, or if someone, on a group of thousands of people, recognized the story and sent it to sister-in-law. Really not a huge fan of that. When I ignored her text, she sent the screenshots to my husband. Here's what followed. Husband to sister-in-law. Can you mind your own damn business? You have done nothing but stir the pot. Op has had nothing but problems since son was born, and honestly the last thing she needs is this. I don't know what kind of resentment you harbor toward her or why you even do, but you've hated her since we got married. Guess what, you're gonna have to deal with it. Op and son are my family now and they come before anything. I won't let you or anybody act this way toward us. Decide if this is worth having a semblance of a relationship with us. I don't give a shit at this point because honestly I have zero interest in ever talking to you again. Sister-in-law to husband. I haven't done anything. I've just been the messenger in this whole situation. If that's what you want, then fine. Shows Op's true character. I forgave Op for what she did to you. She's always assumed I've had it out for her, but I haven't. You don't understand how much you've affected and hurt our family. Op caused all of this. I wasn't the one asking to see son. I was sticking up for mom and Nana. They felt like they couldn't say anything to you because they didn't want to upset you. I chose to be the messenger in this whole situation because I actually care and love my family. You've done irreversible emotional damage to mom and Nana and now me. I hope you'll realize that, and I wasn't the one starting drama. If you don't ever want to talk to me again, then fine. So be it. Don't come back around later saying I told you so. I've done nothing but try to be nice and accepting toward Op, and all I get is this. But if that's the life y'all chose to live, then go ahead. Op has never liked me or mom or any of our family for that matter, and it's said it comes to picking sides. Don't call me a pot stirrer because I've done nothing wrong. I've only told the truth. Sometimes the truth hurts. Getting mad and unfriending me and blocking me also doesn't solve anything. Tell me where I've gone wrong in this situation. Please. I was only looking out for mom and Nana because it hurts me to see them so upset. This is not guilt tripping you, this is just the honest truth. I haven't done anything wrong, yet I'm causing drama because I'm the only one not afraid to shoot you straight. Husband to sister-in-law. I'm taking my wife's side. Sister-in-law to husband. Like I said, it's sad you feel like you have to pick a side. We're adults and y'all are married. When you get married you don't pick sides. Sister-in-law. Am I wrong? Sister-in-law. Please tell me what I did wrong. Honestly, this could have been over with the first text to mother-in-law. Husband and I just needed a week or two to feel comfortable having them over again, and instead sister-in-law made it worse. Parents threw me out as a child, and then expected everything from me when my grandparents died. I was born when my mother and father were only 17. It forced both of my parents to drop out of high school and each get a GED so they could find work right away. My father especially was not happy about this because he had dreams of playing football in college, and instead he had to work at a gas station. He said to my face many times that I ruined his dream. My mother hardly raised me at all as she had to work too. They had a cranky old lady next door watch me most of the time. She wasn't so bad. She gave me more attention than my parents did. My father eventually managed to land a better job as a manager due to his experience running the gas station. It was right after that my mom got pregnant with my sister. I was 6 when she was born. I wasn't exactly shown much love before that. But once my sister came along, it was made pretty obvious to even my 6-year-old self that I was unwanted. The only ones who seemed to care were my paternal grandparents and somewhat my babysitter. And they were more like my parents because they treated me the way a little kid needed to be loved. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. And as my sister got older, it went from me sharing a bedroom with her, to me kicked out of the room entirely. I slept on the couch for 2 years. And I barely had anything to my name other than clothes, school supplies and an old Game Boy. When I was 10, my parents decided they were going to move away. But this move did not include me. I ended up actually being fine with this, as my grandparents had agreed to take me in. My life was instantly better. I got my own room again, and my grandparents gifted me a brand new N64 in 1996. That Christmas I got a Game Boy Pocket too. And there were a couple of other kids my age in the neighborhood I got to hang out with. We rode bikes, played video games, shot cans with pellet guns, built forts, and got dirty playing in the creek. You know, stuff a normal kid would enjoy. I was finally happy. As time went on, I grew up and eventually moved out. But later moved back in to help my grandparents' house as they were getting old and living off their retirement savings. So some rent money from me went a long way in paying the bills. My grandpa was the kind of person who'd wanted to build a bomb shelter during the Cold War. But never got around to it. He wanted to volunteer for the military in the 60s, but was turned down due to a medical condition and the fact his eyesight was not great. So he focused on saving whatever he thought he needed. He told me many times it was better to have something and not need it, than need it and not have it. Our area suffered from numerous power outages in winter due to heavy winds and storms. So having gasoline and propane for heaters and generators was a must. All these saving habits became my own as time went on. Because it was better to need this stuff rarely, than not have it at all. Of course there was the HOA bothering us. But that's its own other story. The problem is, about 5 years back my grandma died suddenly. And my grandpa was heartbroken. He also went about 1.5 years later. Pretty much everything they owned was willed to me. Their savings, their house, their vehicles, their stuff, everything. The house was long paid off, and grandpa knew how to keep up with its maintenance. In fact, after grandma died he kind of doubled down on renovating the place. He had the roof redone, the house was repainted by us inside and out, and we fixed a lot of little things. Grandpa's neighbor George even came by to help redo the plumbing. Ironically, the HOA was rather happy with these changes, because the house didn't look rundown anymore. One morning I was fixing breakfast and my grandpa never came downstairs. You couldn't keep the man from his bacon. So I went to check on him. And he wasn't moving. I called 911 and paramedics came. Only to tell me he'd passed in his sleep. My parents made grandpa's funeral a shit show. They didn't bother to show up for grandma's. They were too busy. And at Grandpa's funeral they didn't seem to grieve at all. My sister also showed up wearing a brightly colored designer dress. Which I wasn't happy about as it was a church clothes-only function. I noticed my parents repeatedly whispering to each other and glaring at me whenever I looked at them. Come to find out at the will reading that my parents knew that they'd been disinherited long ago for their treatment of me. And they thought it extremely unfair I got everything. They threatened to sue me to contest the will. And I got repeated calls and messages from my father, mother and sister telling me I needed to do the right thing and give my father what was supposed to be his. I told them all to flake off in far more unsavory words. My parents ended up taking me to court to challenge the will. But the judge ruled in my favor after seeing the will and hearing us both out. So it wasn't a long drawn-out legal battle. The judge even looked at my parents with absolute disgust after seeing the will and hearing about their mistreatment of me in my childhood. He called my father a terrible parent, and that my grandparents were right to disown him. My father just hung his head in silence, but he made sure to stop me outside the courtroom and tell me I was always the biggest mistake of his life. And that if he could go back in time, he'd make sure I never existed. He should have been a football star. And instead he has to wear a name tag for a 9 to 5. I told him that mistake or not, Grandma and Grandpa could see what kind of nasty person he was. I didn't ask to be born. And the only real love I ever got was from my grandparents. And he was no father of mine anymore. I got a few more threatening and harassing phone calls, as well as some letters from my parents. All demanding money among other things. But over time they just stopped because I completely stonewalled them. Never responded to the emails or letters, and I stayed silent during the phone calls. A few times I just left the phone sitting on the counter with them ranting till they realized I wasn't listening. Aside from not getting the house or money, my parents seemed particularly irked they could not even get a rise out of me. But I was prepared to go to war against them. And they knew it. So in the end they just left me alone. From what I know looking at Facebook the past decade, my sister tried to get into modeling, got married, had 2 kids, got divorced, and is currently unhappily working a job she feels is beneath her. My mother currently works retail, and is also vocal about her disdain of it. Like my father, she peaked in high school. She was a cheerleader back then, and even had her old uniform framed on the wall. My father has pretty much had the same job for 25 years. He must be good at it if he's still doing it. As for me, well, I'm in my late 30s now. And I live pretty much debt-free in a nice neighborhood. I haven't really had a girlfriend since high school. And I've had little motivation to ever have another relationship. But loneliness gets to everyone. So maybe I'll try to find someone soon. Not many are in the financial position I'm in at my age. Single, paid off house, 2 vehicles, and a decent amount in the bank. I guess I could aim to be a stepfather. That might be more my speed. Karen forgets grandson while trying to kick my fat cousin out of the playground. A couple years ago, a bunch of family members were at my grandma's house and, as always, me and my little sister were hanging out with our cousins. 2 of them were around our age, 12 and 14, but one was like 8 years older than me, so we viewed him and his boyfriend as the leaders. At some point we decided to get out of the house and go down the road to this playground. It's important to say that my grandma lives in a private area, so this is the property of the community living there. I admit, we were a little too old for the playground, but the swings were made of chains and really strong. When we got there, we noticed a woman playing with a toddler on the soccer court. We didn't think much about it and my sister and youngest cousin went to play in the swings, while the rest of us sat on a bench to talk. Not a minute passed and the woman was getting away from the toddler and heading in our direction. She addressed me and my older cousin by our names before introducing herself as my grandma's next door neighbor. After that she pointed to my sister and cousin playing and said, "This is paraphrasing. Don't you think he is too fat to be playing on the playground? I mean, my sister's name is thin, but look at the size of my cousin's name." She said that about a 9 or 10-year-old kid. That pissed off my oldest cousin and his boyfriend, and they started arguing and calling her out. Now she was entering Karen mode. "Look, I paid for this playground along with your grandmother, and I expect you to take care of it so my grandson can enjoy it as you did when you were younger." Now, that playground had its hard times when I was little, but it had just come out of renovations and still has its hard wood and metal structures today. But I think Karen thought about that as much as she thought about her grandson, who was struggling to climb the stairs out of the soccer court. "If you don't stop this, oldest cousin, I'm going to your grandma's house to have a talk." My cousin was fed up. He told the rest of us to join my sister and cousin at the swings, and we ran for it while he and his boyfriend stayed to hear the woman scream. A few moments later we see her going towards my grandma's. We regroup and follow, but she was already at the door with a lot of disrespect and payments. My grandma just nodded until she went away, then told us to go inside and that Karen was rude and not to mess with her again. In the house, I looked through a window and saw the toddler. He was climbing a grassy hill full of rocks, trying to get to his house, and Karen was nowhere to be seen. We would throw water balloons at her house at every water balloon war we had after that.